You're listening to the Cam Books podcast with your hosts, Cameron and Trisha McManus. And we're back.
Yes, indeed. We're back, if you can believe it, after a very long hiatus. So that's. I make no apologies for us needing to put our family first, as these things go. Yes, we're ready to dive right back into the Inferno. We are on Canto 28. We are 6 cantos away from the end of the Inferno. We are, in this one, entering the Circle of Discord, as we'll see. That's not the popular chat app, but that would be discord in the sense of division, strife, argument, disagreement, and so forth. And our Dante daily is, hell is not other people, hell is you.
Enjoy. Canto 28. Whoever could, ain with untrammeled words, tell of the blood and the wounds in full, which is now I saw, by many times narrating.
So Dante opens this canto by struggling to describe the sheer carnage he sees in front of him. Now, the lines that follow will be a little tricky to understand, so I'm actually going to tell you more or less what he's about to say. He's going to say, please imagine a series of historical battles that are well known to his readers, but maybe less well known to us. Because this is not so much a scholarly podcast, we don't need to pause on the particular details of the battles. But understand, they're very bloody conflicts. There's an ancient Roman one, and then there is a medieval one. And he's going to ask us to imagine all the slain and maimed in these battles all together in a heap. That's the image that he's trying to put in your mind before he describes what we see in the Bolgia.
Each tongue would for a certain fall short, by reason of our speech and memory, that have small room to comprehend so much. If were again assembled all the people, which formerly upon the fateful land of Puglia, lamenting for their blood, shed by the Romans and the lingering war, that of the rings made such illustrious spoils, as Livy has recorded, who errs not, with those who felt the agony of blows by making counterstand to Robert Guiscard, and all the rest, whose bones are gathered still. At Ceperano, where the renegade was each Apulian, and at Tagliacozzo, where without arms the old Alardo conquered, and one his limb, transpierced and one lopped off, would show it would be nothing to compare with the disgusting mode of the 9th Bolgia. A cask, by losing center, piece or cant, was never shattered so, as I saw one rent from the chin to where one breaketh wind.
So the first soul we see is someone who is rent, that is to say ripped, split. Split from chin to where we break wind, which I think doesn't need to be explained. And he likens him to a cask that has lost its centerpiece. There's a lot in this image, and we're going to have to digress for a little bit. So to understand what he's getting at, first, I want us to consider, when we say this is the circle of discord, to a modern person, the solution to discord is usually that people need to be less fanatical about their opinions. That is, on the right and left, generally how a modern person will understand this issue. If people were not so intense, if they were more open to other views, if they would just kind of chill out a little bit, if they weren't so big on being right, knowing the truth, then we would all get along better. Now, whether this is right or wrong, we'll leave aside for now. The thing to understand is that it's absolutely not the way medievals approached the question of discord. For medievals, discord was not caused by people being too intense about their opinions. Discord was caused basically by a lack of truth. It was caused by people not being able to know and perceive what is true and to agree about it. So that's how this centerpiece image works here. See, for medievals, a society is like a body. When all the members are properly in union with the head, then everything works well. Medieval society was very big on everyone understanding what the common good is and kind of being on the same page about it. So a cask losing its centerpiece shatters. The image here is that if you lose your centerpiece, if you lose the thing that unifies all elements of society, the common truth, the common good, really God, that society is built around, everything will fall apart. A similar statement is being made about this soul. He's literally, ripped in shreds because he's lost his centerpiece. So just as the center of society and medieval thought is the reason for which society exists, the common life of virtue, which ultimately leads you to God, well, the thing that unites all the different little features of you is what Aristotle would call your final cause, your purpose, which again is union with God. So this soul has lost that, and therefore he's in tatters, he's shattered. His various features, thoughts, opinions, feelings can't be unified because he's rejected what would unify them. So that is the most important thing to keep in mind when reading this canto. Dante does not have in his mind that people need to chill out about their opinions. It's not how medievals approached this issue. What Dante has in mind is lies cause discord, and that's why we're again still in the circle of fraud. So now let's go a little further and see who this soul is.
Between his legs were hanging down his entrails. His heart was visible, and the dismal sack that maketh excrement of what is eaten. While I was all absorbed in seeing him, he looked at me, and opened with his hands his bosom, saying, See now how I rend me, how mutilated, see, is Mohammed. In front of me doth Ali weeping go, cleft in the face from forelock unto chin, and all the others, whom there here beholdest, dissementers of scandal and of schism, while living were, and therefore are cleft thus. A devil is behind here, who doth cleave us, thus cruelly, unto the falchion's death, putting again each one of all this ream. When we have gone around the doleful road, by reason that our wounds are closed again, ere any one in front of him repass.
This is a vital passage, and we're going to break it up into 3 thoughts. So first, who are these people? Second, what exactly is happening to them? And third, why does Dante emphasize the word see in this particular passage? Okay, so Muhammad is the medieval version of the name of Muhammad. So this is the founder of Islam. And the Ali he refers to this is actually a disputed point within Islam. Some Muslims would say that he is Muhammad's chosen and therefore first successor. Ali is the one who was leading the Islamic Empire when medieval Christians first encountered him in the Byzantine Empire. But of course, Islam itself actually split over this issue. Sunni and Shia Muslims are precisely in disagreement over whether Ali was the real successor or whether someone else was. Okay, so Muhammad is here. Why does Dante see him as a fomenter of schism and discord? And those of you who recall very early on, we actually have seen some Muslims already in the Inferno, but most of the Muslims, in fact all of them until now, that we've seen were in limbo. There were several righteous Muslim philosophers. There was Saladin that Dante put alongside the pagans as people who he did not hold guilty of sin, but failed to have the theological virtues, and he saw them as akin to unbaptized babies. Again, more a poetic point there than a theological one. So many readers naturally ask, okay, if someone like Saladin can be in limbo, why is Muhammad not in limbo? Surely he would be an even more pious follower of this faith. So to understand this, medieval Christians, it was a widespread belief that Muhammad was actually a Christian bishop who, when he failed to be elected pope, sort of started his own heresy, and that this heresy was called Islam. Now, there's not much historical reason to believe this, but it was a widespread view of Muhammad, and it explains Dante's thinking here. So Saladin, or the Islamic philosophers that we encountered in limbo, to Dante, they're sincere Muslims. That is to say, they really did believe that Islam was true, and that this can't be held against them because they didn't know better, and there you go. But in Dante's mind, Muhammad, according to this legend, absolutely didn't believe that Islam was true. It was a con to get something because he was, in his mind, really a Christian bishop trying to increase his power. So basically, Dante understands Muhammad as an insincere Muslim, ironically, and that is why he's here as a fomenter of discord. He created a division within the church in order to get more power for himself. And then Ali, presumably, Dante sees along the same lines. You could argue that Dante is in a sense weighing in here and thinks that Ali was in fact lying about being Muhammad's chosen successor and was essentially repeating the same thing. So that's what these guys are doing here. They introduced, in Dante's mind, a lie into the world, and because of doing so, they are in turmoil with themselves. You might note that Muhammad says, "See how I rend me." He doesn't say, "See how I'm being split up," or "See how awful this is." He specifically says that he's doing it to himself. "See how I'm doing this to myself." And then he describes the fate. They walk around in a circle in this Bolgia, and then as they walk around, they attempt to heal their own wounds, and they successfully do so until they come back to the start, at which point a demon tears them to shreds again, and then they must do it forever. So they're forever trying to pick up all of their broken pieces and put them back together, and they just can't do it. Spiritually speaking, what is Dante getting at here? Essentially, he's saying this: if your will is set in this way, if your attitude of soul is such that if people won't give me what I want, if I have to get along with folks, if I have to have some sacrifice in order to be a part of a functioning society or even a functioning family, if your attitude is, I'd rather just cut people out so I can have my own way, right? And we're not talking about opinions here, we're talking about power. Well, what he's saying is that then essentially what's going to happen is when it's just you, all by yourself in hell, that's essentially what's going on here, what you'll discover is that you yourself are not a unity, right? We're not, in the philosophical sense, simple beings where we just consist of one thing only. We have opinions, we have desires, we have thoughts, we have memories, we have personalities, we have virtues, we have vices. These things are in conflict with each other. They're not all the same thing, and they don't all get along. What you need to unify the good parts of yourself is a centerpiece, right? You need something in the middle, which is really your final cause, your attitude towards God, your desire for union with him. So what's happening spiritually, what Dante suggests, is that this strife which exists outside rapidly turns inward. If you're constantly arguing, introducing, having little conflicts with other people, that's going to lead to an internal conflict, which Dante suggests will be your eternal fate if you don't repent of it. You will just be in conflict with yourself, rending yourself, ripping yourself to shreds over and over and over again for all eternity. Now, the last thing we want to note here is this. There's a big emphasis on see. Muhammad wants Dante to look at him. He mentions it multiple times, so it's worth remarking on. I think Dante has some interpersonal insight here. I don't think there's a symbolic point. I think there's a human point. I have sometimes seen people get into really heated arguments in public. I can think of a time actually in the mall nearby us when this happened. And one thing that really struck me was that when you are, when it's not just a little argument, when it's a real shouting match, there is a bizarre desire to bring other people in on it. I recall that the gentleman was arguing with some woman, remarked to some guy next to him, he said, "You listen to what she called me?" He says, "You see what he did? You know what he was doing?" There's a desire to pull complete strangers into the conflict, for them to see what it's really like. And I think what Dante's suggesting is that part of the torture is that there's no one else to witness the conflict. There's no one else to say, "You're right after all. I'm on your side." There's no one to side with you. So when Dante comes into this Bolgia, there's this tragic desire, see how I rend myself. Even as he's tearing himself to shreds, there's still that desire, look at the conflict, take it in, let me be the center of attention. Take a side, Dante. I think that's kind of what he's suggesting is going on here, especially because we'll see an emphasis on eyes and seeing throughout this particular canto.
But who art thou that musest on the crag, perchance to postpone going to the pain that is adjudged upon thine accusations? Nor death hath reached him yet, nor guilt doth bring him. My master made reply, to be tormented, but to procure him full experience. Me, who am dead, behoves it to him conduct him down here through hell, from circle unto circle. And this is true as that I speak to thee. More than 100 were there when they heard him, who in the moat stood still to look at me, through wonderment, oblivious of their torture. Now say to Fra Dolcino, then to arm him, thou who perhaps wilt shortly see the sun, if soon he wish not here to follow me. So with provisions, that no stress of snow may give the victory to the Navaris, which otherwise to gain would not be easy.
Okay, so what Muhammad says is his sort of parting words to Dante here is a warning that he wants him to basically pass back to Earth to what I think in Dante's mind is a fellow heretic. So Fra Dolcino, or Dulcino, is the head of called the Spiritual Franciscans movement. They were a group that was ultimately condemned as heretical within the church. It's a complicated history that we need not get into here, but I do recommend looking into it. Indeed, if you want a good murder mystery actually set during this time, Umberto Eco's The Name of the Rose actually centers entirely on this particular conflict. In any case, what's going on here is this. Remember that in Dante's mind, Muhammad is not actually what he historically claims to be. Muhammad is a Christian bishop who drummed up a heresy in order to get power for himself. So the implication here is that Fra Dolcino is also not a sincere pursuer of the truth, that he kind of knows better and is drumming this up in order to get some power. And if you recall, when we were in the circle of heresy, this was a familiar idea in Dante. From a heretic is not a person who really tried their best and ultimately was mistaken. A heretic is someone at a certain level who knows better, but has abandoned the truth because they want something else out of it. So in any case, Muhammad essentially advises Fra Dolcino to prepare for an upcoming military conflict. As we can see, souls in this Bolgia can apparently see something of the future, and they actually essentially want to continue the conflicts on Earth. They want to kind of, give aid to other sowers of dissent. We'll see this happening throughout the Volga. We won't always pause on who all of these people are historically, unless it's a very well-known historical person. But that's basically what the rest of the conversation will be.
After 1 foot to go away he lifted. This word did Mahomet say unto me. Then to depart, upon the ground he stretched it. Another one, who had his throat pierced through, and nose cut off close underneath the brows, and had no longer but a single ear, staying to look in wonder with the others, before the others did his gullet open, which outwardly was red in every part, and said, O thou, whom guilt doth not condemn, and whom I once saw up in Latian land, unless too great similitude deceive me, call to remember Pierre de Medicina, if e'er thou see again the lovely plain that from Vercelli slopes to Marcabo, and make it known to the best of two of Fano and Angiolello likewise, that if foreseeing here be not in vain, cast over from their vessel shall they be, and drowned near unto the Cattolica by the betrayal of a tyrant fell, between the isles of Cyprus and Majorca. Neptune ne'er ere yet beheld so great a crime, neither of pirates nor Argolic people.
So this soul has given as a future prediction what is really the recent past by the time Dante actually writes this. So it's a long, bloody, complicated, bitter feud between some families in Florence and the neighboring areas. Scholars actually know most about this feud from this passage, so it need not concern us too much here. But as we're going to see in the next lines, he's going to link in a more classical reference that we do know. But basically what is described here, lots of drownings, lots of stabbing in the backs, lots of intrigue. Again, it's all discord.
That traitor, whom sees only with one eye, and holds the land which someone here with me would fain be fasting from the vision of, will make them come unto a parley with him. then will do so, that Fakara's wind they will not stand in need of vow or prayer. And I to him, show to me and declare, if thou wouldst have me bear up news of thee, who is this person of the bitter vision?
So this soul in typical Dantean style has been kind of describing people without naming them. In particular, he mentions some people who might not like the sight of a particular section of Italy at this time, and Dante basically says, okay, well, if you want me to pass on this news, you need to speak plainly about who is this person you're referring to, and by implication is like, and who are all of you? So the soul will respond properly. He'll identify not just himself, but a whole bunch of others. Just one of the names mentioned in the following bit will be of use to us. So that we don't break the poem too much up, I'm going to say who he is now. We're going to see a soul identified called Curio. So probably a lot of you are aware of the historical event where Julius Caesar crossed the Rubicon River. This was a momentous event in Roman history because it's really what plunged Rome into civil war. In crossing the Rubicon with his army, Caesar was basically declaring war on the Senate, and the bloody conflict follows and so forth. So Curio is said to have, when Caesar was on the fence about whether to do this, Curio is said to have kind of whispered in his ear, like, go for it, it's fine, you can win, you've got this, and so forth. So Dante sees him as a sower of dissent. He's going to get the most commentary in the following lines.
Then did he lay his hand upon the jaw of one of his companions, and his mouth oped, crying, this is he, and he speaks not. This one, being banished, every doubt submerged, in Caesar, by affirming the four-armed always with detriment allowed delay. Oh, how bewildered unto me appeared, with tongue asunder in his windpipe slit, Curio, who in speaking was so bold, and one who both his hands dissevered had, the stumps uplifting through the murky air, so that the blood made horrible his face, cried out, thou shalt remember Mosca also, who said, alas, a thing done has an end, which was an ill seed for the Tuscan people. And death unto thy race, thereto I added, whence he, accumulating woe on woe, departed like a person sad and crazed.
Okay, Mosca is a particularly important figure that we probably have not heard of. So what happened was this. There was a man, Buondelmonte, who in some way jilted this woman to whom he was betrothed. Mosca suggested that the bride's family, in revenge, should kill this groom, this Buondelmonte. And in doing so, in Dante's mind, started the conflict between the Guelphs and the Ghibellines. And as we'll recall, this conflict is the thing that gets Dante exiled. Of course, by the time Dante has written the Divine Comedy, he's in exile, but the events happen before it, so they're all referred to as future things. So this is a key thing for Dante. What he's trying to say is that Italy now is in a similar place that Rome was in during the time of that civil war, right? The people are turning against each other. And this part is really key. He doesn't see it as primarily caused by big political ideals or campaigns or tactics. He sees it as people whispering in ears at just the right time. Curio is just like Mosca here, right? A little word, a little suggestion. So this, none of us here are probably inciting civil war exactly by our gossip and rumors and whispering. But he intends this to be kind of an examination of conscience for his readers. You know, how often am I pushing a conflict a little further by a little comment I made? A little, you shouldn't put up with that. You know, I heard. That's what he's really suggesting, that these horrible, bloody conflicts are not really started by generals. They're started by who the generals are listening to.
But I remained to look upon the crowd, and saw a thing which I should be afraid without some further proof even to recount, if it were not that conscience reassures me, that good companion which emboldens man beneath the hauberk of its feeling pure. I truly saw, and still I seem to see it, a trunk without a head walk in like manner, as walked the others of the mournful herd. And by the hair it held the head dissevered, hung from the hand in fashion of a lantern. And that upon us gazed and said, O me! It of itself made to itself a lamp, and they were two in one, and one in two. How can that be? He knows whoso ordains it.
Now, the description of a guy who's just holding his own head is in some ways a lot less gruesome than on the other dismembering we've seen. So it's worth asking, why is Dante so uniquely horrified by this, and why does he almost see it as this kind of like inverted Trinitarian mystery? How can there be two in one and one in two? The way to understand it is this. Recall that centerpiece we talked about before, the cask shattered because it loses its centerpiece. Well, the head is the centerpiece, really, in medieval thought. The head is really, the seat of reason. It's kind of the thing around which everything else is organized. Remember that for medievals, the soul is not a little ghost inside of you. It's essentially your intellect. It's your mind, is perhaps the better way to put it. Your intellect and will. So what Dante is really pausing on here is this. Everyone else we've seen is maimed in some way. They're in tatters, but they're still very clearly one person. What he's suggesting is that in some horrifying yet inexplicable way, this particular soul has actually succeeded, maybe, at what all the other souls are trying to do. That is, he has actually divided himself into two people, and yet not quite, because, again, he is a body holding the head. Everyone else is sort of trying to find a new personhood by ripping things off. This last soul seems to have succeeded in a sense, and he's going to stand in for like the total, complete version of this self-punishment.
When it was come close to the bridge's foot, it lifted high its arm with all the head, to bring more closely unto us its words, which were, Behold now the sore penalty, thou who dost breathing go to the dead beholding. Behold, if any be as great as this. And so that thou may carry news of me, know that Bertram de Born am I, the same who gave the young king the evil comfort. I made the father and the son rebellious. Achitophel, not more with Absalom, and David did with his accursed goadings.
Okay, so Bertrand de Born is famous in Dante's time for having incited King Henry II of England's son to rebel against him. And then he compares himself to some biblical figures. So readers may know the conflict between David and his son Absalom. Absalom rebelled against David, and it's a very dramatic thing in Scripture. Interestingly, we probably don't remember Achitophel, who incited Absalom and sort of advised him to go into this rebellion. This is a really important point that Dante's again emphasizing. We haven't seen the son that Bertrand de Born advised to do the rebellion here. He's not in the circle of discord. We don't know exactly what's happened to him. It's the whisperers, not the people actually fighting the wars, that for Dante are the sowers of discord. And this really highlights the difference between the medieval and the modern mindset. In the modern mindset, conflict is caused by people being too into their own ideas. So for us, Absalom is a sower of dissent because he rebelled against his father. That makes more sense. But for Dante, the real cause of dissent is lies. It's deceit. It's falsehood. It's false ideas that seem appealing. People believe in them, and then they have conflict about that. They lose their common good. So for him, it's actually the talkers. They're worse than the killers in this way. For him, they really are the true cause of this conflict. And that's why this sort of false prophet character is mentioned here. So why is Bertrand de Born singled out? Because in turning father against son, for Dante, that's the closest relationship. That's a natural one. It's prior to any state. It's prior to any ideology. It's prior to any value system. Fathers and sons should get along. So to introduce dissent into that relationship is to sort of almost will total severing of yourself. If you're okay with a father and a son, going at each other's throats, you'll be, in a sense, okay with your head going against your body. Note too, it. When Bertrand de Born is described, he is very rarely used. He's an it now. That's what he's done to himself.
Because I parted person so united, parted do I now, bear my brain, alas, from its beginning, which is in this trunk. Thus is observed in me, counterpoise.
All right, this curious word at the end, counterpoise, in Italian is contrappasso. This is a key word to know in any Dantean discussion. It's used by a lot of scholars. It means literally something like counter fault or counter penalty or almost counter pain. It's really the stand-in word for the big idea in the Inferno itself, that this is not just, poetically appropriate punishments. These are not just kind of nice little, delicious ironies. What this really is that souls in the Inferno are all running after some thing that they perceive as good that isn't God, and the pursuit of that thing is hell. So if we link this back to the Dante Daily, hell is not other people, hell is you. This is a famous quotation. Off the top of my head, I think it was Jean-Paul Sartre that said, hell is other people. And as, it's a famous quote, sure, but it's absolutely 100% wrong. Hell is not other people. Hell is, as Dante suggests in this particular canto, being alone with yourself for all eternity, alone with yourself and what you have chosen and what you have loved. And what the souls in this Bolgia love is discord, is sowing little seeds, separating things that ought to be together. And when they're alone with themselves for all eternity, that separation starts to turn inward. And its final culmination is Bertrand de Born, where the head is severed from the body, and he's not a he anymore, he's an it.
It makes me think of how, in relationships, if you're not at peace with yourself, you will not be at peace with your partner. You will not be at peace with your children. You will not be at peace with anyone. Mm-hmm. And I think of earlier when you were talking about if you don't follow truth all the way down, if you sever a little bit of the truth, it's kind of like a house of cards. It all kind of falls down. It's kind of that same idea. We in ourselves are maybe not like a house of cards, so to speak, but that there needs to be harmony within us, like a peace about even our faults, that like an acceptance in a way, or an acceptance of maybe not our faults in that we're just excusing ourselves all the time, but I would say things like when it comes to being critical of our looks, in the feminine side of things, we're often very hard on how we may appear. We may be hard on ourselves about we don't look like so-and-so, and then we become jealous, or we're, just discontent. For men, maybe it's how much money you make, or what would it be?
Yeah, no, well, I think it could be money. I think in
popularity.
For some men it is looks, although I think this is largely by confusion. I think because men are very strongly attracted to women by their looks, they sometimes imagine that is the main thing that attracts women. Mm-hmm. So some men will be dissatisfied with their looks, but I would say understand it not as like, for a woman, you can be dissatisfied with a perceived lack of beauty just in and of itself. For men, the beauty is very utilitarian, right? They want women to like them, and beauty is a means in some men's minds to get women to like them. So it's very much that way. But actually, I think one thing that you are saying, my mind's going several different places, but St. Thomas Aquinas has a bit in his Summa about hating yourself. Mm-hmm. And he says that actually, strictly speaking, when you really understand philosophically what love and hate are, you cannot really hate yourself. But you can, as he says, sort of hate yourself in this kind of, he says accidentally, but he doesn't mean like a car crash. He means sort of, in this context, would be almost...
kind of fall into it.
Yeah, what he says is that
again.
The way it can happen is that if a man thinks of himself as something he is not, I'm paraphrasing, not quoting. Mm-hmm. So if you have false ideas about yourself, this can cause you to hate yourself because you can hate what you really are because it doesn't match this thing that you falsely perceive yourself to be. So in that sense, this is why I think this very much dovetails with
The Dante Daily.
yeah, but also with the self-image, right? If you perceive I'm supposed to look like this, that can cause you to actually hate the real beauty you have, right? And it can go the other way too. If you falsely see yourself as a lot worse than you really are, then you kind of hate this image of yourself and so on too.
Or you're just continuously discontent.
I'm thinking too, when you mentioned relationships, now this is something you know a lot better than me. I know that in your business is perhaps the wrong word for it. We talk about sometimes people wanting to avoid conflict, right? That you respond to marital conflict by sort of,
Running
running from it. And I mean, I think this is my own tendency to some extent. And I think that what we've talked about in political conflict applies here too, right? The modern tendency is to say, the way to avoid conflict is to just kind of chill out and I don't mean that there's nothing to this.
This
but
is a West Coast thing. Maybe not our East Coast friends, but our West Coast friends.
And I want to know, obviously, especially in marital conflicts, sometimes the cause of the conflict really is sort of petty and probably the solution to it is to say, oh, okay, maybe it's not such a big deal. But when it is a big deal to you, just pretending it's not is not going to work. And there's some medieval wisdom in this, because Dante's idea is not that we could all get along if everybody just wasn't that serious about what they thought was true. He thinks, no, the problem is truth having it or failing to have it, right? The problem actually is false ideas being believed. You can't just keep believing the false idea and have the conflict not happen. So I think there is something in that. If you are bearing some resentment for your spouse, sometimes you think the strategy is, well, I'll just kind of silently bear this grudge and do nothing about it and say nothing about it, and everything will be fine. But it really won't.
Ticking time bomb.
What you need is truth, right? You need to actually have, okay, am I right in this resentment? Those things that I think she thinks about me, does she really think them? Usually she doesn't. But you have to actually have that conversation to find out.
Yeah, and it's good, I think, have that conversation to find out, but start with yourself. Why am I feeling that way? What's coming up for me when I experience this in her or him, that I'm feeling that way? What's going on there? And then share it. Not to be critical, not to say this is your fault and put it all on them. That's, I think, one of the biggest mistakes that we do. And that's where that quote, hell is other people. It's like, whoa, you're totally missing yourself in the equation. Like, you are part of this equation. And if you remove yourself, you are wrong. The answer is always wrong. So we have to think more holistically in the dynamic of what is happening here. Relationally, personally, and I think one of my favorite things, my most prized things when working with couples is, can they own their own stuff? I love it when someone goes, I have a tendency to do this, do that, not like scrupulously or falsely, but just kind of like self-reflecting in a way. And then being curious about how that might be impacting the relationship. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that there is, you have to kind of get right with yourself. And, I'm thinking now, so, we should give some advice on how do you get right with yourself. And of course, the theology hat comes on. Now, I'm tempted to think of a professional development activity. I guess I've probably undergone it several times.
Oh, no.
It's a very common thing for teachers, and I think in a lot of professions. It was all about identity. And the usual conversation about identity goes something like this. So list all of your identities, and they'll say, okay, your economic status or class, whatever you call it, and your profession and your hobbies, and whether you're married or single, whether you're disabled or not disabled. And they'll be all over the place. Some of these things will be really quite
personal,
closely related to you. Some of these will just be kind of like things happening to you. Like they'll be like, how much property you own, or, whether your parents were like this or not. And there's kind of almost anything will count as identity. And the exercise is always like, you just list the things and you kind of reflect on them, but you're not given any sense of like reflect on them. How how am I to put
What
them
does
in,
it matter?
like how am I to put them in
it...
order? Which of these
Yeah.
are some of these good? Are some of these bad? Are some of them more important or more fundamental than others? And when there is occasionally discussion permitted in these things, I try to get my little apostolate in there.
I feel like you were opening a can of worms.
No. But what I'll say
Okay.
is this: those things are part of your identity in a sense, but they're what the philosophers would call accidents, not again like unintentional things, but they are, if you like, traits. They're features.
Right. Okay.
But they're not you fundamentally. And I say that what you have to really start from is that what you are fundamentally, that the centerpiece of the cask is your identity as a human being, which means a rational animal that's ordered to union with God, a child of God. That's actually what you are fundamentally. And when you really get that, it's the centerpiece. It gives unity and tells you what all the other features of your identity mean, even the trivial ones, like that. That there'll always be something in there, like like a hobby, or like how many grandparents are still living, or something like this, where it's like, how this is something to talk about, but it's kind of exterior. But the thing is that those things,
you brought it home.
Those things do matter if you understand that what I am fundamentally is a being that's supposed to be one with God. Well, then, of course, my identity can be a big circle, and I know what it all means, because all of these things are relevant insofar as I can draw them into God. And I feel for people, I really do feel for people that don't have the faith, because then they really don't have an answer to the question, who am I? You've got all these pieces, but there's no centerpiece.
That's exactly why there's a lot of people out there who struggle. And then put the wrong thing as the main thing, and follow that all the way through, and it leads to, unfortunately, nothing.
Yes.
So I'm so glad you brought it home. I was getting worried. I'm like, okay, this is going to take forever, but you did it so quick, and you're very good at that.
Thank you. Yes.
That is it. I would say, for parents, for anybody really, a really great resource to nail this down is Canavox. I believe it's canavox.org or .com. Just Google Canavox. You're going to find this amazing group of people. Not all are even necessarily Catholic. There are many Jews and I think Muslims in there who all are kind of on the same page about what, where the healthy stances on identity and the truth of it as it pertains to natural law. And they help a lot of people, especially families, guide their children in the right direction regarding the truth of that. So I think that would be a great thing to look into.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think the important thing to see is that these sort of, it's easy to scoff at them. Oh, this is like a navel-gazing, my identity kind of exercise. But the thing is, your identity is important. And what we really need if we want to raise our children to, like, know and love God is, not to say, like, hey, listen, that thing that those people are doing there, it sounds very appealing, but it's not, just ignore it. We need to show them that, like, the best version of this is in the real truth. Like, yes, you should think about all the various facets of your identity, but the difference is that you will actually know how to think about them. You actually will have answers and not just questions. And that's the real key thing. So we do often end with a song. Now, we have noticed...
Although lately...
Yes.
And it's so funny now that we've kind of had a little bit of a break, bit. Sorry, someone reminded me it's been several months. I apologize. Pregnancy is not easy. We've been getting notifications from, I believe it's YouTube, saying that they've taken some episodes down because of the music. So
I think what I might suggest going forward is a song that we will not play, but we will just sort of tell
we will
you.
Hum. Just kidding.
Yes. Now, in our defense, not that the AI bots that take the things down care about this sort of thing.
Right.
We are not actually breaking copyright law. Using the song in this context would be a textbook example of fair use. But it's not a human judging your case. It's a bot that just simply notices, oh, I recognize this sequence of numbers. Let's take the video down. But the song I think that actually best goes with this canto. Now, I roll my eyes right out of my head as I say it, but it's true perhaps in ways they didn't intend, is Let It Go. Yes, from that Disney movie Frozen, because indeed that sort of is, in a certain sense, what's going on with that character. She imagines in that song that all she needed to do was to be totally free, to just cut everyone out of her life so that she wouldn't have to suppress her emotions or kind of ever really exercise any self-control. And the film actually is about her to some extent understanding that you have to deal with the storm inside. It actually isn't a solution to just tell everybody to go away and be by yourself forever, because the fundamental problem was something internal, not external.
I'm amazed that you chose that song, but okay, we're going to go with
it.
it.
The lyrics of it really do match the idea of it, yes. So there we are. So thank you for joining us. We will do our best, mind you, we have been, to get through the rest of the Inferno a little more regularly. Yeah. But again,
we're going to finish this season.
We're going to finish this season, but again, we're a real-life Catholic family. We have real-life Catholic family stuff, and sometimes it's summer. Things do get out of hand.
But we're going to do our best. Baby Jacob is due really any day now, so we're going to try and record as much as we can before we get out there. Otherwise, we'll see you in the fall.
Yes, and to excite some interest, the best is yet to come. Some of the best cantos in the Inferno are the next few, so do stick around.
Thanks for listening to the Cam Books podcast. Follow us on Instagram at Cam Books.